I don't give a shit.
You don't find it a great
I really don't care
treasure
about politics.
trove of
Some people
material?
do. I don't. I think the system is corrupt. Every time I'm walking on the street, somebody's like, hey, vote for so-and-so. I'm like, it's all corrupt. Anarchy is the only way we're going to change anything. Violence. Kill a politician. That's the only way you can change shit.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you're joking.
No.
Are you serious?
Yeah, voting is not going to make a difference. It has never. Not in 100 years.
So what would you like to see?
I'd like to see some politicians start getting murdered and reform this government.
Oh my
into one that's
God.
not corrupted. I'd like to get business out of government, and they're not going to do it. So the only way to do that is start killing people.
Isn't that exactly what
Look
you
around the
don't
world.
want?
How has anything changed around the world? How has any regime changed happen around the world? Violence. That's the only way. You think people in Arab countries are that much different than us?
Yeah.
Violence. That's the only way you depose a system that doesn't represent the people anymore.
I mean, I think the wonderful thing about the United States is that we can vote, and you do change
Your
administration.
vote doesn't go anywhere. Your vote doesn't do anything.
Yes, it does.
You can now be arrested and never tried if they say you're a terrorist. Never tried in your life. Just arrested and held forever. Who voted for that?
So shoot them all.
No, not shoot them all. Start shooting them until they get business out of politics and they start representing who we are instead of their money interests. Yeah, violence. That's the only way shit changes, man.
Okay.
Look at history.
It runs.
Another day, more disgruntled Trump voters.
My medication, it runs $20,000 a month without insurance. I make $800 a month. Oh, that will kill me. That would kill my friends. That would kill millions of people in this country if they lose their health care.
We're in California's District 22, a rural community in the state's Central Valley. This district voted for Trump for the first time in 2024, but now his policies threaten one of the benefits people here rely on the most.
It bothers me when people like Elon Musk say that people on those programs are the parasite class. It's just cruel.
Do you know anyone personally who voted for President Trump but depends on benefits like Medicaid?
Oh, yeah. I know a lot of people.
You got to understand, Mr. President. Nancy Pelosi said that we are deployables. We don't got much money, and we have to depend on China to get phones, to get electronics, Mr. President. Mr. President, you're going to hurt us. You're going to hurt everybody that supported you, Mr. Trump. Tried to negotiate with him. We need Walmart. We cannot live without Walmart. Yes, Mr. President, I know you mean well, but you got to help us.
All right, you shady motherfucker, listen up and listen good. I voted for you because of your no tax on overtime bill, amongst other things. But here's the deal. I just read your great big beautiful bill, and it's bullshit. The overtime, no tax on overtime, this is the way it works in that bill. You ready for this shit? You get a $10,000 tax deduction at the end of the year for overtime, if you make less than $100,000. Well, let me tell you something, boys and girls. There are very few skilled tradesmen in this country, and I'm talking about construction workers, especially union construction workers, oil field workers, truck drivers. None of them will be eligible for that $10,000 deduction because it stops at $100,000. Might have a chance. But this is not going to affect those of us in construction and manufacturing. It's just not. A good line welder, most of the country, you're talking $46, $55 an hour, okay? Even more in a coastal state, as much as $60 or $70 an hour. And you work 10, 12 hours a day. This big, beautiful bill is a big pile of bullshit for skilled tradesmen.
This is 2 Ezra chapter 15 and verse 16. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Bakar Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. All right, I want to go into a lesson based on the clips that you just saw, all right, of Trump supporters and their newfound regret, for their support for Trump. And these don't include the news of the war. All right. Many so-called white people that supported Trump supported him on the basis of being anti-war, that he would pull them out of the Middle East, not drag them into it. And now they're finding out what we all know too well through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, which is that Trump is in the business of furthering, all right, the agenda of the so-called elites. All right. He sold the average working class so-called white person on a dream of restoring white privilege to the average so-called white man in America. But in actuality, he just used that as a Trojan horse to get in office and drain the resources of Babylon the Great, which is America, into the hands of the rich elites and the oligarchs. All right, that rich class of Edomites. All right, and he's a part of it. All right, now the reason I wanted to start off with 2nd Esdras 15 and 16 is because ultimately this is going to lead into sedition. One of the groups that is most armed in Babylon the Great, which is America, is the so-called white man, particularly when you deal with the working class so-called white man. All right, the blue collar workers, they're armed to the teeth. All right, when you deal with sedition, it's a violent overthrowing of the government. And a lot of these Edomites are going to rebel when they really see that there's no light at the end of the tunnel. That basically what was sold to them as a restoration of so-called white privilege through the phrase "Make America Great Again" was just a farce. It was a slogan that was used to finesse them into believing, all right, that a guy like Trump, who's been rich his entire life, would do them a favor. All right, this is Matthew chapter 12 and verse 25. And Yahushua knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? Because now there is an all-out agenda by the rich so-called white people of robbing the wealth of the middle class and poor so-called white people. And the average so-called white person isn't smart enough to really recognize what's happening around them to see that they basically voted against their own interests. And Trump is very cunning, all right, because what he'll do is he'll say, look, we're going to cut snaps, we're going to cut welfare because the so-called Negroes, Latinos, all right, and Native Americans, those are the Michael Jordans of welfare. They're the ones sucking up all our resources. But when you look at the actual numbers, the so-called white man is the majority concerning those who receive those welfare benefits. And you saw a few clips of examples of those Trump supporters on Medicaid. So when Trump cut Medicaid, he actually fucked them over. Excuse my French. And a lot of these Edomites are starting to wake up to the reality that Trump was no different from the other ones. He put out this slogan about draining the swamp, but in actuality, he's in the same business as his competition. They're all in their own class. Right now, you have a war of classism amongst the so-called white man, where the rich so-called white people are now preying on the middle class and poor. All right, there's Ecclesiastes chapter 14 and verse 5. He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good? He shall not take pleasure in his goods. There is none worse than he that envieth himself, and this is a recompense of his wickedness. All right, and we don't have any pity or sympathy for the average so-called white person who is now being finessed by their own leaders. Because when you go back to antebellum, all right, when you go back to Reconstruction, the ones who were putting the most hell on Jake was the so-called working class white people. Not the super rich so-called white people. It was the ones that were put as taskmasters, the ones that their only bragging rights was that they weren't a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American. Those were the ones snatching Jake up and putting him on trees, showing up to picnics, taking pictures, cutting off limbs and wearing it as or putting it in your home as a souvenir. It wasn't a super rich elite so-called white people. They sold the average so-called white person that dream of at least you're better than niggas. And they did it again. And what Trump did very cunningly, very masterfully on the left-hand side is he sold them this dream of coming into office and restoring that privilege that the so-called white man once experienced in Babylon the Great, which is America. But when you look at his policies, he has hurt them more than he's helped them. All right, the big, beautiful bill. You saw the one clip of the guy basically explaining that the Edomites that make over 100,000, this has nothing to do with them. And if you make under 100,000, the tax credit really don't help you as much. I mean, it helps you more than a Edomite that's making over 100K. But when you look at that bill, it really didn't help the ones who voted for Trump to get in office. And then the cherry on top is now we're on the cusp of World War III, whereas Trump said that he will pull America out of these conflicts. They're getting dragged deeper into them. And the reason I'm bringing these things out is because these are provocations, because we know ultimately, all right, there is going to be sedition in Babylon the Great. All right. And a lot of it is going to fall on the average so-called white people believing in their politicians and realizing that their politicians are not in office to help them. All right, this is Isaiah chapter 19:1. The burden of Egypt. Behold, the Lord rideth upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at his presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the midst of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof. And they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards. And in Babylon the Great, which is also known as spiritual Sodom and Egypt, the Lord is stoking divide. And one of the key divides is going to be between the average so-called white people and their leaders. That is going to make sedition manifest. You know, people often forget Babylon the Great, which is America, was started by seditionists. It was started by Edomites, so-called white people, who rebelled against the British. So rebellion is in the spirit of this place, and the Lord is just redirecting it. All right, so that the average so-called white people are now at odds with their leaders, and rightfully so. Their leaders are robbing them. When you hear this rhetoric about the middle class being robbed, they're not stealing from so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans because y'all don't have shit anyway. It's talking about the average and middle class so-called white people being robbed. And then on the other side of that, with the cut to Medicaid and certain welfare programs, the poor so-called white people are now being affected. Because now you're in the game of classism. Not to say that racism doesn't exist anymore. There's just another war, another social war, if you will, another social divide. And that's against the rich so-called white people and the poor so-called white people. There's and I won't even just say the poor, the middle class and the poor so-called white people. And then you have the rich, and they're stealing from them. All right. When you go to Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, verse 4 reads, behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. Now, the reason I'm bringing this out is because he cannot be satisfied. And what does that mean? He's robbed and spoiled everybody, and the only people left is his own. And that's why I read Ecclesiastes, the 14th chapter, because he that is evil to himself, if this is how he's operating against his own people, to whom will he be good? And the beauty of this situation is that as the so-called white man begins to prey on his own, he's going to get a taste of what he's been given to everybody else. And we're going to witness so-called Edomite on Edomite violence. They shall not regard their kings nor princes. And this state of Israel thing is a perfect example of that, because a lot of these Edomites that supported Trump do not agree with fighting and dying for the state of Israel. They don't agree with it. So for Trump to drag them into it, they feel betrayed. And we know, according to history, when Edomites feel desperate, they get violent. When they get hopeless, they get violent, based on history. And we know, according to prophecy, this is going to equate to sedition on this side. All it takes is for people to feel like the game ain't worth playing anymore. That's all it takes. It doesn't take a lot. All it takes is for people to look at the world that they live in and feel like it's not even worth playing the game anymore. Once that happens, it's a powder keg. All right. And now we're coming into that time through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, where a lot of people have that mentality. You know, a lot of people honestly feel like it's not even worth playing the game anymore. And at this point, they just need an excuse. And this is why this is a beautiful thing through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, because again, you know, we were given a warning according to prophecy that all these things will come to pass. You know, and that's why knowledge and wisdom shall be the stability of thy time. You know, we're not really lost at sea. You know, when the Lord has given us this eye salve to see what's happening in the earth through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai. So we understand where everything is headed. All right. All roads really lead to the MOTB, which is the mark of the beast, that RFID C-HIP. But before that happens, you're going to have these things play out. And it's no coincidence that you have Trump going against his supporters, the ones that got him in office. All right, because you're dealing with two horns on the same beast. All right, this is Revelation chapter 13. And I want to jump down to verse 11. This is verse 11. Revelation chapter 13 and 11 reads, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." All right, and that's dealing with those two parties, the Democrats and the Republicans. In ancient Rome, it was the plebeians and the patricians. The patricians were the ancient version of the Republicans, and the plebeians were the ancient version of the Democrats. But it's two horns on the same beast. And Trump is a perfect example of that. All right. His whole slogan was that he was against the institution. He was against the career politicians. And he got in there and did exactly what career politicians did. And this is beautiful. We have we're not against any of this, because ultimately it's the will of the Heavenly Father. And the feeling of being betrayed that the average so-called white people are feeling is only going to increase as they realize that they were finessed. And ultimately, it's going to boil down to sedition. All right. So, matter of fact, because the Lord told us first. All right. This is Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 5. And it reads, "Behold ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously. For I will work a work in your days, which you will not believe, though it be told you." All right. So with that, I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity.